Hi. Uh, so I'm Ashik. We have Arun and Anudev with me today, and we're going to talk about a lot of creativity, how AI is going to affect, how this is going to change, and how much have they already changed. All right. I know a lot of us are skeptical, a lot of us are scared, a lot of us are feeling excited. Okay, let's explore one by one. So, Arun, my first question is from the very first photograph to you know from the orchestration of very first implementation of photographs to a place where you could go write about something uh, like something crazy, an astronaut riding a horse in space, and a model just built. So if you know about the technique, it's called stable diffusion. Basically it starts from a noise, and every process it starts denoising and builds a beautiful image. I'm sure it does a wonderful job. So what how did we reach here? What's the If you could talk about a
Sure,
bit
sure,
of
sure.
history.
So, hi everyone. Um, the history of AI. So, it actually, as an academic discipline, it starts with cybernetics. So, cybernetics was uh, introduced to the world by a scientist called Norbert Wiener. He officially first published his book on cybernetics on 1948, actually, after the Second World War. So, as you are aware, most of the technological innovations are a result of those two wars. Uh, and in that book, he mainly focused on, um, the control and communication in animals and machines, basically. So that's what he was explaining in the introduction to cybernetics. Um, so he made an interesting statement at that time. So I'll read it like, a biological organism is an energy and information processing system. So, the title of this session is mainly focused on two areas. One is data, and the other is the multidisciplinary approach on various digital tools, including AI. So when he mentioned this term information, later it was developed by his discipline Shannon, in 1950s. At that time, uh, he he was collaborating with not just like mathematicians or physicists, but he was actually uh, trying to form a group with anthropologists, physicists, biologists, and in all disciplines, making cybernetics itself a multidisciplinary approach at that time, because he himself said like, earlier in science it was like, one man who was completely specialized in one area. So he is giving the example of Leibniz, and at that time after the Second World War, he was saying we have to explore the no man's land between disciplines. For example, biology and mathematics. Maybe a biologist could not solve a mathematical equation, but he need to understand what a mathematician is trying to explain to him when they are, working in a collaborative fashion. And cybernetics came, and cybernetics was it greatly contributed in the counterculture, hippie culture of 1960s. And then the computer art came. People started using computers to generate art using code. So that usually happening in 1968, that period of history. So it's a very important point of time, 1968, even in India and also in other part of the world. One interesting thing that happened is the curation of procedural or generative art, called Cybernetic Serendipity by Jasia Reinhardt. So that happened in 1968, and also the generative art pioneer. So her name is Vera Molnar. So she started generating art in that period. In 1969, Akbar Padamsee in India, which is a very interesting thing, that uh, he formed a workshop in Mumbai, which is called View. Maybe the very first time in India, someone is trying to be multidisciplinary, connecting various areas like art, psychology. Then maybe you're aware of Nalini Malani, who was a leading digital artist in India. So also Mani Kaul Kumar Shahani in cinema. I read that Mani Kaul got the fund to produce his Duvida from the View workshop. So, and I think Padamsee's daughter acted in that film. So that happened in India at that, and also in the world, like, you know, this serendipity exhibitions, cybernetic serendipity exhibition, 69, the moon exploration by human. And that's a very crucial year in history. And after that, Hackers Conference came in 1984 in USA. So people get, at one point of time, computer was regarded as kind of a, you know, degenerative art tool. Like, you know, during Vietnam War, all this technology was contributing to the war. Like, you know, it's making different kind of machines against human. But during 1990s and late 80s and 90s, the scene got changed. People were attracted by kind of technology, and they started using it as a creative tool. And then with the foundation of Turing, Alan Turing, who was considered as the father of artificial intelligence, through his seminal paper in 1952. So many research happened all these years alongside this generative art and, you know, computer art scene. And one of the important year is 2016. I think Sophia was introduced as a robot, but not an AI robot, I think. Then people got, you know, attracted to, you know, some machine is, you know, somehow behaving like a human, and she's walking. And I think CET students took her to, you know, the engineering college in Trivandrum in a sari, you know. So people trying to experiment with all these robotics and all. Then how you know, people became more aware of AI is by the introduction of Midjourney, I think, in 2022. Even before that, there were so many image generating models and GANs and everything was there. But Midjourney really changed the scene because they came with a sophisticated tool. So you just need to input your idea in natural language. You don't need to code or anything. But earlier it was not like that. You know, you have to accumulate so many codes from internet, GitHub, and, you know, other repositories, and then you have to do something. You have to tweak the code and everything to generate something. But after Midjourney, the scene changed. Then 2022, I think the same year in August, Stable Diffusion was, you know, Stable Diffusion. The difference is it's completely open source. People can download the model and they can generate images with that particular Stable Diffusion model. And I mean, these two are diffusion models in that terminology. And all diffusion models generate images from noise. Not just Stable Diffusion, even Midjourney also. So that's the history. I mean, there are a lot of gaps in between what I said, but
that gives us a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
Anudev, Anudev is a, you know, like he's a teacher, he's a lecturer. So especially in fine arts education, how do you think the role of AI should be? Should you know, how should students approach AI, and how should the education sector approach AI? Should they embrace it, or should they, you know, leave out of it?
I think we already have kind of, you know, developed a habit of using it excessively in our college, for example. Like, students coexist with AI. Like in last FY UGP syllabus upgradation, we officially made it into a kind of, you know, syllabus component.
So it's part of the curriculum now.
Yeah. So that is, now there was kind of, you know, lot of discussions regarding the philosophies behind the kind of, you know, absorption. Then we finally ended up in somewhere where we can coexist. Like, you know, when it comes to creativity, whatever you say, you know, there will be a lot of contradictions and things like that. So what we did is like to take it as a philosophical framework to students to enter into the discourse and slowly build up the units of understanding to see the existing knowledge frameworks through the lens of, for example, advanced technologies. So that was the point where we built the entire syllabus. It was not just, you know, like, you know, earlier we had that time when Photoshop came, every album designers were, you know, educators. So then we know what happened in the end, like in Trivandrum area, if you see, then there will be a kind of cultural design of wedding albums, for example. So that happened when you are not seeing it from the pedagogic perspective. So that we don't want to happen in the case of AI. Then the syllabus was framed in a way, for example, in my college, there is like, you know, from Chenda onwards, you can take bachelors and masters. Kathakali, Chenda, like, you know, different traditional faculties are there. So when a student joining in BHONS, for example, is given a choice that, you know, he is attending the Bharatanatyam class and then going to generative, you know. So then these kind of parallel sittings are happening. Then we can only provide a lens where students can build a kind of framework to work on the existing knowledge base that is like, you know, huge for Kerala's, you know, historic setting. Whatever you take, for example, painting or music, or like, you know, there is a Bani of, you know, Tripunadara Bani, for example, people might not be knowing. So like there are kind of, you know, systems of education from which people like Yeshudas has came, like, you know. So how we can isolate certain thing and like make it into a Photoshop course. That was the kind of, you know, thing to tackle at first. So it's a kind of framework to think how to think, making models, how to think, you know, seeing model in a kind of greater detail. You might be knowing what it means. Like, so that was the kind of absorption that is going on. Otherwise, you can complain, oh, you did it like that. Or, but I don't believe in that kind of a judgmental
How's
thing.
your students loving it? Like, they were
but we end up reading that, you know, yes, sir, let's delve into this thing.
Yeah, that smells ChatGPT.
So while seeing the kind of, you know, lexical, you know, framework, we can easily identify who is using what and everything. But otherwise, it's good that they start using new terminologies.
Yeah.
I think we can see AI as a good teacher, like, you know, to grow up with.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question is to both of you. Both of you have a chance to comment on this. AI-generated arts often raises concerns about the originality of work, particularly originality of work. It's not about AI-generated art. Doesn't necessarily mean AI-generated images or videos. Can be sound. You know, there are experts AI systems that can clone your voice with just 10 minutes of sampling. So let's say, what if I can sing like what if I can sing like anybody? Yeah, Yeshudas. What if I can sing like Yeshudas? So what should be our point of view on this? What is the very meaning of originality of work?
I got it. See, I think we have to go back to anthropology to answer this. There is a very interesting theory in anthropology put forward by this French anthropologist René Girard. So his theory is called mimetic theory. And I think he describes that theory in Violence and Sacrifice. I think in that Violence and Sacred, in that book. So what he was saying, I mean, people actually like to, you know, mimic other people, and that's how the entire revolution, mimicking plays a very important part. So that was, I'm thinking like, that's humans' most basic, what to say, characteristics that, we love to mimic people. When when human made an AI model, that's the first thing he applied to the AI model, that he was training the model to mimic others. Like recently, I heard someone from the Kerala cultural scene saying, AI can't create an art because art has to be organic and it's completely mechanical. It can only mimic Vincent van Gogh's painting. So my question is, who makes AI to mimic a Van Gogh painting? It's our requirement actually. It's very human centric in that sense, and it's also, so many researches are happening in this AI field, and we don't know the capacity, what and how fast or how slow it can do. Maybe you're a programmer, you know that programming, it can easily find the error in a program, and it will say like, thousandth line, there is an error, which is that much capacity a model possesses right now. But here, I think in our premises there is this prejudiced feeling that art has to be something. I mean, this is what exactly Vera Molnar was facing when she created computer art in 1968. So that's why I said 1968 is very important here, because at that time she got this criticism that you are dehumanizing art. Exactly, that's what here critics were saying about AI, that it's not organic, it's very mechanical, and obviously, I mean, the training process decides how precise an AI model is. If you feed a lot of data, it can be more precise if you want precision. And also the term artificial intelligence is also a little bit problematic, because we are also learning in almost the same way. Like, we are also taking data set and we are analyzing, which is right and which is wrong. So I would like to say it's like kind of an alternative intelligence, something like that. It's still there, as he points out. There has to be a coexistence. I was reading a paper like 2 days ago, and in that paper, it was like, actually, our Mehtil Radhakrishnan already said it long back in 2011 in his very important article, Devam Manushan Yandram. I think he's the only one who extensively wrote something on robotics and artificial intelligence at that period. And he, in one of the section, he was saying, ഞാനിനി ജന്തു വിമോചനത്തിൽ നിന്നും യന്ത്ര വിമോചനത്തിലേക്ക്. So in that way, AI and other, maybe we can call Nunapaksha in that seat, in that way, world started treating these kind of models, because there has to be an interspatial ethical concern, not just a human-centric ethical concern. Yeah.
And what about you, Anudev? Yeah. What does creativity means to you? I mean, adding to this question, please.
See, everyone having a basic knowledge about AI knows about what is a discriminator, right? Like, there is a discriminator. So, what is mastery actually? My question is like, what is mastery in any field? You are developing a kind of, I remember once Dayanida Singh in a workshop was telling that, the basic ability is like how you see your table from a bureaucratic perspective. Bureau, like the kind of table process we have, like, you click the pictures and come back to your studio and, like, put it on your table and you decide. There is a bureaucratic element in every master, that you have to ultimately decide which sketch is good. So that we cannot democratize. There you are a kind of, you select. Then AI in that aspect is very similar to human process.
Another John Abraham was mentioning Hitler in this context. I'm the Hitler of the cinema.
So I believe that we also train in our education to build that discriminator in the terms of AI, how to be how to judge your own works. If you don't, do that, then what will happen? You are so liberal that you are curating everything. So that never happens till now. In my understanding, that never happens. So I think that that discriminator thing is already there. You work under, for example, I was working under Vivek Vilasini once. Then there are some opinions we say, and the master knows certain things which he discriminates because he know the craft actually. The recipe should be there, no? Like somebody is knowing the recipe, and we are submitting ourselves to that workshop situation. That's what I want to tell. We can see it as a workshop situation in creative industry, because you don't need to follow any factory culture from the modern time. you know like A.R. Rajaraja was saying that everything will look the same. Everything will look the same if you follow a factory thing. At least you can maintain a workshop culture where you actually agree or disagree with your master. That thing is very evident in AI's case. Like, you know it better than us. Like, how the data decides which noise to put.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah? Which noise to select, right?
Yeah.
So that is very traditional, I think. Like, I want to put it in a traditional way that, there is nothing, against Indian culture working with AI. Very much like, Karkhana system. Like, in Pahadi painting and everything. Like, there is this Ragmala, everything.
And also the process of washing the photograph is something
Exactly.
similar to diffusion model.
Diffusion
From the noise,
model.
it's
Actually,
washing the
yeah.
image.
So it's very much in our cultural thing that we agree to our masters. Masters say this is not a Gonduli Raga. Go out of my class. Like then we study the Gonduli Raga and come back for the discrimination of the master, that whether I am following the algorithms properly.
Exactly. So Arun, like you have a lot of experience in experimental filmmaking, right? Like in cinema, AI is being used, at least being assisting in screenplay writing, and we all know that it can do a very good job when it comes to generating text. So then a part of direction, screenplay, cinematography. So like how is even deepfake performance, like we recently saw in a movie that Mammootty was Rekha Chitram, right? Like what do you think, how do you think the industry is adopting this technology?
I mean, cinema is one of the industry which easily picks the latest technological innovation. But I think what cinema is doing with AI is not that much exciting for me, because these are all we have already seen from the past Indian films, and to make something hyper real. The current practices in commercial film industry, I don't know where it's going, but they're trying to finish it. I mean, the intuition of the creator is to make it more real and real and real. This realism was haunting people from the very very first time the train was screened in the French theater. People were scared and they got out of the theater because of the realism. And from that point, people are like into realism and they want to make everything hyper. Even in AI applications in Malayalam cinema also. I mean, it's really good. Like they are taking all these new technologies. And in experimental scene, actually, I'm a little bit skeptical to use the term experimental film because cinema, I don't think it's this injurious art form. It was not me that said that. In one of the functions, Shama Zaidi, so she said this very interesting statement that she was saying, like, I don't think that cinema is this injurious art form in Mumbai. And now I'm thinking it's true, because it already reached some kind of a stagnation, and we are saturation, and it's we are actually doing a postmortem on cinema again and again. But in data processing and data analysis, there are very much interesting things happening. If you can make it as an audiovisual practice, then I would call it as something an experimental film, rather than not following these typical cinematic techniques. I would like to add something on data. AI, in our scene, that people mostly aware about image generation, like you type a prompt and you'll get the video or image. But there is an underlying process where just like Norbert Wiener was saying about information and data, that I would say that each and everyone here are getting transformed to some kind of data every moment, with cameras or with mic. You're when people say that it has to be something organic. There is an interesting thing that you are doing video call with your lover or your father or mother, and you are not seeing that person. You are seeing pixel by pixel, data by data, value by value. But still you are getting some kind of emotion that, but the underlying thing is, you are seeing a bunch of values. And, and it's quite very, I would say, like mechanic or non-organic thing. In data processing, it's really interesting.
So like let's imagine a future scenario where you go home, instead of watching a movie, you just talk to a machine and say that I want to watch a 2-hour and 30-minute movie where a boy and a girl meets over coffee. You curate, you, and you can demand I should cry at the end, and the model knows you how to make you cry, and imagine it can write a script and generate frame by frame. We're not very far from there. We're getting there. We're not achieved yet. Do you see this in the future?
Yeah, last COVID time I remember. So there was this experiments happening in everywhere, how to be online. So one area suffered much with the COVID thing was like theater. So they made an internet theater. I think somebody from Delhi School of Drama.
I was in one of the online sessions so this theater director was saying how we can do a performance in a virtual space, and stream it, and not in a physical space.
I think in a MetaQuest or like MetaQuest situation, like when we are covering our entire thing with the
augmented reality,
like the Apple Vision Pro or something like that, then actually your exposure to the so-called real is like very feeble, like very kind of we can roll out the kind of factor of reality. It is almost like some kind of higher order Dzogchen meditation or something like that, where some Buddhist one of the recordist of Lama once came to Vishwabharati. Then he was saying that what if we are actually observing reality? So for them, visualization is something very important for the practice. So maybe we go to a temple and suddenly a Kadina is blasting. Then suddenly we realize that, this reality is not the real reality. Something like that. So maybe we can think about a virtual reality session like that. Someone involving a major part of his life in a virtual. Already some of the restaurants have started virtual dining where you are having the taste faculty also involved into this kind of a augmented or generated realities. So we have certain, like reluctances towards experiencing something is generated. So what it should be is another question, like what should be the nature of the generated is something else. Otherwise, like Arun was saying that, we don't know whether AI has another plan to make it more comfortable for us or make it more, because I was observing these language model related things. Every time we ask any question, the language model throw up something like a, in the towards the end, it will say something about the ethical part of this. You know, you search for something like, you know, legal policies in Kerala, then ethically speaking, there is an ethical part. Always there is an ethical part. I think that is much, you know, comforting for someone like me. You know, we don't have a habit of thinking about the ethical part, but AI sure does.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, one more question is like more of, I mean, a lot of us use large language models on a day-to-day basis. So, like, let's say it's a morning, I'm not feeling well to go to office, so I just have to send a mail to my ma'am. So we're very personal, we have a very personal relationship. So like, ma'am, I'm not feeling well, I'm not coming up, just a WhatsApp message would be fine, right? But on the other hand, I go to ChatGPT and ask it to write me a mail, so like, so that it has some fancy words. So from a very, you know, leave letter to anything, like it's me, I know it's me prompting, it's me controlling what is being communicated, but we sort of need a, you know, reassurance from the AI side, like, to make it look cool. So that is kind of diluting my personal visions and views, right? Or diluting, or, you know, enhancing. So what do you think about more people using this generative so what does that mean? Coming back to the term originality, what does that tell about me? You know.
See, you are actually asking AI every day to write a letter. So you are actually considering AI is something superior than you. Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
See, I think everyone here is familiar with ChatGPT, or, you know, currently DeepSeek. I you know, for this session, actually me and Anudev was looking for a title, and DeepSeek came at that time. So I asked DeepSeek, like, suggest some title for AI and generative art speech, and it gave some titles like generic, the canvas of code, from algorithms to aesthetics, and its Madhurumi is like a, you know, it has a literary background. So I thought, like, you know, what if combining some literature scene with this this technical terminology. And then I have to check whether DeepSeek is familiar with Malayalam literature. So I asked a question, you know Malayalam and the writer, Malayalam language and writer. So it said, like, you know, I know, and, you know, it gave me so many options, Chemmin, Vaitagadi, Deshathinte Katha, and all those things. Then I asked to can you do a wordplay with famous Malayalam book titles and some core terminology? So it's like, absolutely. And the results were really fascinating. One was like Kazakh in the API. So the API is like, you know, we used to you know, communicate with something other. That, so it really mixed the Kazakh Idihasam with that term API. But what's more interesting is that description. So it's giving the meaning that an interface to the mythical and real world of Kazakh, which is like which is really, and then another is Oru Deshathinte database. So these are all the titles it was suggesting for this particular session. Meaning, a repository of stories, memories, and histories from a village. See, it's really wonder. And then Manishan or algorithm. So that was another title. And another one is Mayadi Purayode HTTP request.
So yeah, it has
I mean, like,
yeah, it's
then Pathumayda Adijeevitham.css. Then I asked DeepSeek, like, you know, why you said Pathumayda Adijeevitham? You didn't say Pathumayda Code Jeevitham. So then it said, oh, that was also a good option. It was then Deivathinte Vikrithigal.zip. So, which is like, I mean, the meaning is a compressed file of divine mischief and human folly. So how interesting these models are, like, you know, all these titles, I'm sure that you liked because they are all very interesting. The way it combined with the terminology, and not just maybe it's combining in a random fashion, but the meaning it's deriving is so language models, they are aware of the meaning, not just words.
To me, creativity is basically the fusion.
Yeah,
I mean, like
yeah.
there is a theory that blind people cannot dream. Okay, so why? Because they haven't seen anything. So anything that you create and claim to be organic is not actually organic. You have seen it somewhere, you have experienced it somewhere, and your brain is trying to do a fusion of that. Is what you call creativity. That is creativity to me. So like they have all this information, they have read this all this literature, so that's how they are able to
See,
that's how models become creative to me.
While speaking about the DeepSeek, it like only last week, around last week,
Yeah.
it came out. So uh, everyone was excited to test the new uh, thing. So it has a kind of particular framework where it is more procedural and rational.
Chain of thought.
Chain of thought. So this chain of thought we can see,
Yeah.
right? So we were discussing certain things internal about China because it's originating from China. So we were discussing this thing, like, me and my friend was like testing out the algorithm and then asking like, what is like your condition now under the new regime? Or like, are you completely happy? Then it started the entire political discourse. In between, it's saying, oh, I should have not told this to you. Sorry. Like, then the entire chat was erased. So the chain of thought is much like, censorship under the censorship. It agree with the censorship. I think the Chinese model is much tamed animal in our terms, like, tamed animal, right?
Yeah. AI training, I think it's better to call AI taming. എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നത് ഈ ആനയും പാപ്പാനും തമ്മിലുള്ളൊരു പോലെയാണ്. ഇപ്പോൾ എയും the man who controls AI, because we want that perfection of human from its side, so we are like taming it, like I mean that's why all the ethical questions that we are going to ask to AI can be applied to animals also. Because all the questions are from a human-centric point of view.
Yes.
I would like to show a video where I used large language models, because these models, so what I did, I extracted the Malayalam words from that particular model and I composed it over a webcam video of mine. Cheta one ennu ezhudiya. So this is actually a test where I used a word to vector model. So you can see, like, in the borders, maybe you can't read, but you can see Malayalam words there. So what exactly it's doing, it's taking the words from that particular AI model, which is data, and it's mapping it over the, not exactly over the pixels on the border of my, the green and my body, there is a border. So it's actually putting those values over in that part. So in this manner, I was referring to the experimental scene in AI.
there are
Like,
endless
we have
possibilities.
we have the data. We only need to manipulate it, and because these are like, I mean, the way when we say krodham or like sneham, the way model understand it in like numbers, so that it's called vectors. So but it's giving these kind of interpretations. The DeepSeek is giving these kind of interpretation with these values and parameters. That's where the creativity side of an artist lying, I believe.
I think the starting point was like about the cybernetic, for example. Like, one thing I found very interesting is that when we discuss creativity, for example, it's not the traditional way of understanding that we possess now. It's like more about the term is interdisciplinarity. for example. Like in our discussions nowadays, when we bring something, like for example, a student from Hyderabad University is doing some experiments about, let's say, mushroom growing. Sadly, he is in the painting department. So, how can he exhibit the work? And how they can present a paper about what they have done so far? So for these kind of situation, we created a kind of dialogue everywhere in fine art faculties to accommodate the experimental, same happened with Akbar Padamsi when he was showing in a film festival. Sisigi was said to French critics were saying, "Oh, this is like too much headache. This cannot be considered a film." So I think there was this shock of the new in every era. So that I think we never recognized that Akbar Padamsi did these things, like even the cloud like experiments in the events in the cloud chamber. So I think that when we need to theorize something like that, we also need to update our understanding as a society that there is a discussion on interdisciplinarity going on. So if rather than generalizing and compartmentalizing the knowledge, we can sit together. For example, you are a kind of forensic police officer. Let's come to our college and sit in a session where people are, studying the skulls, looking at live model. There is no way, easiest way to study the skull is like from a live model. There is a kind of reverse engineering of the flesh and so someone, an artist from Latin America, his name I guess is Cicero Moraes. He developed certain kind of algorithmic models to generate in Blender. He works like mostly in Blender. He works generate certain muscle tissues based on the structure of the. So already in forensic facial reconstruction we have a set of algorithm, we can say, a set of rules. Okay, this person chews with this side, then there is a possibility that he will develop more muscle growth on that side. Like this, there is a kind of set of knowledge systems associated with forensic science. But how far we can invite someone from another faculty to our discussion spaces? So every college should have a center for interdisciplinary, thoughts, and bring people and think about art in that perspective. Like everyone should contribute. I was doing my PhD in Shantiniketan. So my faculty was struggling how to convince the government to make a center for interdisciplinary, section. Then what they were doing, they were pulling money from their own pocket and making a Harry Potter like institution. Like, you have that third wall through which you can enter. So why we are not able to make some official interdisciplinary centers as a part of every school is one thing to consider.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe we can take some questions from, I'm sure,
Good afternoon. So if we examine the last 3 decades, many publishing houses in India are flooded with manuscripts for getting it published. So in the era of this AI and generative creativity, that number is going to increase alarmingly. So what defense mechanism do publishing houses have in terms of technology other than lexicon framework? Second question is that you mentioned about one lexicon framework, like a delve into. Likewise, can you suggest few? Because I'm also a college teacher. I just want to know when students submit assignments. Thank you.
Yeah. You want to answer that?
Yeah, I can partially answer the question.
Yeah.
See, this is through my experience. I was making some kind of a home server isolated from the world for my private research interest. Like, we can actually find, for example, there is this thing called plagiarism check. So these are using those kind of lexical frameworks to find out whether this is made by a human. But you know that, through the passing of time, everything will kind of, be more tighter to evaluate. Because now the variety is, like Arun was saying, you cannot generate an image of a hanging man upside down. Because the training data is so much that AI thinks that every human being should stand with their two legs facing down. Because of the weight, I think. So if you train the data with much, kind of reverse weight, then you will be able to find whether you need the censorship, right? Like, that is the only option. Train more with what they are doing. Meta, for example, they are feeding all our information into their server. Then the kind of realism it generates is much more logical.
Answering the other part, and I don't think like if your students are really good enough and dedicated to spend time to create, there is no way actually like technically, I don't think there is a technical and a feasible way to tell apart this is written by a human being and not. Maybe you can make some artificial mistakes, introduce some mistakes to the AI generated content to mimic that you are a human. Look at that. You have to actually put in mistakes to prove that it's not written by a human. So, and lexicals work in a way, 12.
Anyway, he asked, I can tell one more word, triangulate.
Yeah.
Use of triangulate is now very common. So I remember only people who do photogrammetry was using this thing mostly. There is this technology of assuming the other side from missing photographs. Military was using that, some kind of, some secret organizations were also using that. But it was not common. That the kind of, photogrammetric triangulation and everything was not common. So obviously AI was a part of that. Then the technical terms from that secrecy process also got into the database. Now it's part of our day-to-day life, the altitude triangulation, like specific combinations are there, which we knowingly or unknowingly use because of our exposure to these kind of language models. So if you want to generate a set of lexical, but now it's interesting, like the Chinese algorithm uses both lexical and semantic framework. Semantic and semiotic framework. So it can go in between the two realms. Like, I give it a try to give some of the ancient manuscripts or like stone inscriptions. So there is the one recent site was there in Karnataka. So there was this stone inscription, which is very hard to decode. I gave it to algorithm and it was saying about a girl who was also interested in astrology, and she was a niece of a minister in some early Hoysala king or something. It was interesting actually. Like we from our current understanding of language, cannot process certain other sides, which uham is very good. Prediction is very good for the semiotics, semantic algorithms.
And answering your second part about the publishing houses, I really have no idea. I hope they get published. So like, I cannot comment on it. But technically, it's like the models have become so good that nobody can tell apart. There are tell apart. It is a computer generated content or it is an so-called original content. Yeah. So next.
Yeah. Thanks for the session. It's nice. My question is a bit more broader. Yeah. Because AI, on one side, people used to say that, okay, which is a fact, in fact, what I think, like, as the industrial revolution came up, AI revolution is coming up, which in fact reduced a lot of human requirements and the productivity is increasing, right? Coming to this area, which is more of creativity, it's not really productivity is the question. It is more of intellectual properties, right? So when it comes to intellectual properties, where we can meet the balance between this AI and creativity, will there be any balance, or eventually AI will be taken over in that sense also?
So intellectual property mean in a legal sense.
You're talking about an overall sense,
Okay, I mean, we are also doing stuffs like that, no? So we are also reading, we are also seeing so many paintings, and uh, we are developing something from those marks. So I think the process AI is also doing, the same way. But still, it's a, you can easily say that, this image is generated in Midjourney because of the color tone. Because the model is like that. It's kind of a, it has its own characters, the way it's trained.
but it's temporary. We are going to get past
Yeah.
soon enough. But talking about original content, what is original content remains a question. So let's say I go to a gallery, I watch 1,000 paintings, go home and paint one. Can the authors of this original painting sue me? I just saw them. That's only the model is doing. So
See,
artificial neural networks are mapped exactly after mimicking our ability to generate.
Right now.
Yeah. Let's hope it doesn't get any better than that. So
But from a legal point of view, I don't think any law saying that we generate one image with Midjourney or Stable Diffusion, so we can say that it's my property.
But
So there is no law formulated in India like that.
I
The
believe
discussions
that-
are happening.
I believe there should be a law
yeah.
because you remember our childhood, like when we used to read the comics. There was this style of certain artists. Then I can see works of Chitra Ganesh, for example. Chitra Ganesh uses certain comic sensibilities in her work. So how to see the sensibilities transferred, that is also very interesting, right? But when AI uses Chitra Ganesh's creativity, then we might be, I'm just taking an example. Chitra Ganesh is using certain sensibilities inspired by the comic world or in certain works. Or let's see, Ravi Verma's images now given little bit of locomotion. So that we cannot criticize as doing some harm to Ravi Verma. Everybody knows, but Kottaram has certain ownership over the works. But I don't think that is a big issue. Issue is when somebody start to use it as his own kind of when they claim their kind of authority, or the same thing, the mastery, the so-called mastery is the problem, I think. Like you are assuming that you are a master who created this style. I think if you think in terms of Bani, then it's okay. It comes in the Bani. So I am also doing the thing. Whenever we do a workshop on traditional miniature, it's very difficult for any new students to come up with a very unique looking traditional something. Then they have to copy. We all copied.
Copy of the copy of the copy.
Yeah. So
someday-
I think that was a great discussion. So let's wind up now. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much, all of you. That was such an enthralling session.